Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of the SMIE Consulting Midweek Roundup. It's Wednesday, July 8th, 2026, and this week we're going to be answering 3 questions we've been hearing from international educators over the last 7 days. And as we do each week on the Roundup, we take our questions from the newsletter that comes out each Monday, and there are 2 versions of that newsletter. Called All the SMIE News Fit to Share, available through email subscription and also LinkedIn. Between the 2 versions of the newsletter, we have over 3,200 subscribers. So very humbled that so many of my international educator colleagues are really focusing on are using our news source as a means to help edify themselves each week as to what's happening in our industry and how they might be able to apply some of these lessons and cautionary tales to what we're trying to do on our own campuses. So thank you again for making the newsletter a part of your regular international edification each week. So let's get right on to our first question of the week, and that is, why should future skill needs shape university academics? And this comes on the heels of QS's Future Skills Index that's coming out. Future Skills, QS World Future Skills Index 2027. That's a mouthful. Anyway, they are having their webinar today. I think it actually happened at 11 a.m. this morning. But it's unpacking that Future World Skills Index for 2027. Excuse me. And this talks importantly about the webinar, how artificial intelligence, technological disruption, and shifting workforce demands are reshaping economies around the world. Understanding future skill readiness has never been more important. And this is sort of, some, when they read that question, might go, is this a chicken or the egg kind of thing? But the reality is this issue of future skills impacting what we teach in academia should be an inherent part of how we operate as institutions. And for institutions like my own at the University of Akron that are really keyed in on experiential learning opportunities for students as part of their preparation in their academic field of study, having those industry partnerships, whether it's in education in the schools, whether it's in healthcare, in hospitals or clinics, whether it's business students in doing internships in local area businesses or co-ops for our engineering and polymer science students. All of those are things that we do on the regular. 89% of our undergraduates have those kind of experiential learning activities before they graduate. For students that are studying in the sciences, it might be research that they're able to do with faculty through 30 of our research centers and institutes that we have at the university. All of these kinds of things are really essential preparation for our students before they graduate to get them ready for the work world that they're going to enter into when they finish studies. You also look at how corporate America has really changed over the last few years its model of hiring, that they're often using internships as ways to find and really train up the future employees that they're going to have when they finish their degrees. And in fact, many of our interns, particularly our co-op students, they're doing the work of actual engineers. That's something that we really need to think about as we're building out our programming, our academic offerings, and all of those kinds of things. These are the marketable skills that employers, future employers, are when they have internships, co-ops, clinical trials, whatever, clinicals, student teaching, whatever it is. Those are opportunities for those employers to get a sense of whether or not they want to hire these individuals when they graduate. And I'm working. Having lived in Findlay, Ohio, which is the home to Marathon Petroleum, I have a number of friends who work there, and they exactly do this for their internship programs. They hire students for either part or full-time internships during the school year or the summer months as preparation for eventual employment. when they have their degrees. So that's a reality in corporate America these days in many different industries, not just in the engineering field, but certainly one that we all need to be aware of in our academics and planning our academic offerings to reflect the needs of what employers are asking for. We all know that many employers are not will say they know how to be an engineer, they know how to be an accountant, they know how to be a nurse, but we're looking for more. We're looking for individuals that have a wider range of communication skills, rhetorical skills, critical thinking skills. All of these things have been so vital for our students that at every institution I've worked at in the U.S. That core general education, liberal arts education, whatever you want to call it, is essential learning for every student at the university, regardless of their academic discipline. And they'll have up to a half of their total credits being these kind of offerings. So we really want to think about longer term what this means for the universities that we have and the programs that we're offering. But you don't need to look much further than what happens in most East Asian countries. They know how to do long-term planning. They have 5, 10, 15, 20, 30-year, 100-year plans for some industries. And they have this, like the Japanese soccer team that just exited the World Cup here in the U.S. They have a 100-year plan to win the World Cup. So in terms of the planning that's going to be needed, the steps that they need to take as a football association for the country to develop the talent to get to a point where they can win a World Cup. So we know China has routinely 10, 15-year plans for education, higher education. They have 30 or 40-year plans. These are things that we do poorly in the U.S. is long-term planning. But we know for a fact many East Asian countries that particularly are the westernized ones that have
what are you trying to find out about
aging
countries?
That have these aging economies and aging workforces that are coming up short to fill the employment skills needed for their countries. That they are turning to international education to recruit the students that will come, do degrees in the specific areas that they are lacking skilled employee graduates in their countries, and they're offering incentives for these students when they're finished to stay and work. So there are countries that are aligning economic skill needs in their economies, in their countries with international education. We don't do that in the U.S. We don't even try, I don't think, on the national level. We probably have, if some forward-thinking institutional leaders who really see that the need to be on the cutting edge of industry connections, they're probably taking the lead on some of this stuff and incorporating, for example, a very significant one that every institution needs to be grappling with. What does AI literacy look like at our institutions, and how is that implemented by the different academic disciplines that our students are having to are pursuing degrees in? So I think that this is something that every institution should be grappling with. Few are doing it well. Oftentimes it's down to the individual departments to decide how they're going to have individual AI policies for how it can be used in the classroom, and fewer still are actually teaching AI as a skill that they're going to need to have as graduates in that area, whatever subject it is, and it can apply to every subject, and that's the beautiful thing about it. It's AI literacy for the individual disciplines. It's not like everybody needs to know how to use ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or any of these other features. It's how to apply AI skills within your industry to improve efficiencies, to improve quality, all of that kind of thing. That's what really is at the heart of that debate. So how well are we doing that? And I think it's going to be institution by institution, and within institutions you're going to have varying levels of success, because there are very few institutions right now that I've seen certainly that are implementing campus-wide policies on what AI literacy needs to look like, policies regarding AI usage in classroom and how it's used in the admissions process. It's very disparate and not certainly consistent by any stretch. So that's why future skills need to be taught, incorporated into our academic offerings. And I know we've had conversations with some of our engineering colleagues and polymer colleagues in our College of Engineering and Polymer Science, and they are talking about radical restructuring of their academic offerings to that involves not only accreditors, both at the state and regional level, but obviously faculty and faculty unions that are teaching classes and what needs to be taught. All of this is on the table. So it's a very complex set of issues and certainly no easy answers there. But the idea that future skills need to be shaping how we are teaching our programs, our academic disciplines, absolutely has to be part of the equation, I would think. So let's move on to our second question. And this is related to what matters most in the visa interview, timely subject for this summer, for Indian students who are probably the most obsessive group of prospective students that are looking at the United States, most obsessive about the visa, but also work permissions and everything else that comes after as part of their motivation for coming to the U.S. in the first place. So we know that that's been taking some hits in recent months since this current administration took office. But what matters most in the visa interview, there's a couple of articles that appeared this week. One is from a former U.S. consular officer that reveals in the headline, "Why Honest Indians Get Rejected." So very headline-grabbing kind of an article. And the visa officer, Yvette Bonsall, has explained why they get denied, even when they're telling the truth during their interviews. And so she was speaking on a podcast recently, and it says what I've been saying for years, that one of the main problems is Indian students going for that visa interview for an F1 visa are treating it like an exam, and it's not. Memorizing answers instead of speaking naturally. So that's the first thing that I say in every visa session I ever do for students overseas, is that memorization piece, as they see that as their tool to help crack their tests, because that's how they're taught. They're taught rote memorization all the way through school. Their college entrance exam, national exams that they take are very high stakes events, and they basically study for a year and just memorize everything the faculty member, the professor has said, and they spit that back up on their test at the end of the year, and that determines their grade and whether they get into a decent university coming out of high school. But she does go on to say there are several psychological factors that at play during the short visa interview, and we all know how short that can be. First up is that many Indian students, as she says, place visa officers on a pedestal and often agree with their assumptions, even when those assumptions are incorrect. So they're being deferential. That attributes that partly to cultural differences. While Indian culture values humility and harmony, American interviewers generally expect direct and confident answers. So the visa interview is, and her quote, is not the place to be overly humble. That the applicants should politely correct the officer if they have misunderstood something about their application, about the institution they're applying to, about their financial situation, whatever it might be. So also, if it's a couple interviewing, she says if a husband answers a question that was directed at the wife during a visa interview, it is considered a red flag by visa officers. And that's not a very common, obviously, for undergraduates, and maybe for some of the grad students that might be coming for doctoral programs. So she also says that many students claim they want to study in the U.S. to work with a particular professor because they have memorized that answer during mock interviews. So again, going back to the memorization piece. And she says, people prepare as if it's another IIT entrance exam, but the U.S. interview doesn't work that way, she said. So the other two common mistakes, giving only one or two word answers to questions can make an applicant appear evasive, while providing too much information can also hurt the interview. So she also talks about applicants bringing too many unnecessary documents, even though the visa officer often do not even ask to see them. So obviously, it really makes, if you're just reading it straight out, you're going, All right, don't say short answers. Don't say overly long answers. Make sure you're correcting them if they make a mistake about where you're applying or any of the assumptions about who you are and why you're going to the U.S. But don't talk if you're applying with someone else. Don't talk over them for them. So a lot of very seems like a very fine line that you have to walk for a visa to get a visa in India from this former visa officer. The second article is actually a story of success, a story of an individual that was twice denied an F1 visa, once initially coming out of high school, and then once for a first degree. He went back and did get a degree to go for a master's, and is now completing a PhD in information technology. So he goes through his story, starting as his first attempt to secure a visa. It was back in 2015, applying as an 18-year-old for an F1 visa. The visa was rejected after just being asked three questions: his name, his age, and who would pay his fees. So that's what the individual is saying. Took the setback in stride, reapplied to the same university the following year, and was rejected again. So he took his time off. He did his bachelor's degree at Gujarat Technical University and focused on completing his education in India, bachelor's degree. And after graduating with his bachelor's, he tried once again to apply to a master's in the U.S., and he was approved for a master's. Coming off that, he says after his two refusals, he said he stopped trying to win over the officer in the moment, start building a profile that speaks for itself. I finished my degree, got clarity on what I wanted to study, and clearly stated my intention in the application. He said preparation and perspective made a critical difference. The other big thing he adds is confidence. And for me, confidence came through having other options. By my third interview, I already had an offer from Australia in hand, so I walked in calmly instead of desperate. I genuinely wasn't afraid of another no, and it showed. So that confidence piece is important. To be comfortable talking about your choices, why you're deciding on a particular institution in the United States. But I'm really interested and excited that he, on his third attempt, had this other offer from an Australian university. Was negotiating from a position of strength, so to say. If you don't take me, I'm going to Australia, and I'm okay with that. So his is a story of persistence of over a period of almost 10 years before he came to the U.S. to do his master's and is now applying for his PhD. So he's really, I think, hits on something that's very important, that confidence factor. So good to see a success story like that, that don't give up after the first. We've had students that have gone for 3 or 4 interviews before they finally get approved within the course of a year, trying to come to us. So part of that is confidence. Part of that is knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing why you want it, and all the necessary details you need, and being able to state that case clearly without sounding rehearsed and without memorizing your script. So good to see those stories. Now, the final question we're talking about today is: has Australia gone a bit too fee happy with international students? Now, we all know Australia's had a few changes in the last couple of years. They've increased their English language standards. They've increased the amount of funding that students have to show to get the student visa. And they've also increased the visa fees. They doubled it just a year ago for international students, I think to make it one of the most expensive visas in the world. It was, I think, 2,000. They increased it to 2,000 Australian dollars last summer, and now it's gone up to 2,500. So again, another 25% increase. So it is by far the most expensive destination in the world to apply for a student visa. So, and this is a non-refundable $2,500 fee now. So that's pretty damning. Also, the fee for temporary work after graduation, that fee for a visa has gone up to $5,750 that the student pays themselves. So some really significant changes there, and in Australian fees. Certainly one that doesn't make it any easier, and certainly can put off students that might feel that they're being taken advantage of. And given the increase in delays and increase in visa denial rates for students applying to Australian institutions, you are now now looking at some very significant thresholds. So the fee hikes, the increase in minimum salary thresholds for employer-sponsored work visas has also increased from 76,500 to 79,400 or 79,500. And specialist skills income threshold moved from 141,000 to 146,000. So some of that's inflationary, I'm sure, haven't been corrected in a while. So it's folks from the Group of Eight, the CEO for the Group of Eight, Vicki Thompson, that is sort of their Ivy League. She says, this is not just a fee increase, visa fee increase. It is a direct hit to Australia's competitiveness, skills, pipeline, and international standing. So the article does go on to give a comparison of fees for visas across major destinations. $775 for the U.S. if you include the DS-160 and the CEVIS fee. Australian $935 for the UK, $240 for Canada, so the lowest of the five, and $790 for New Zealand. So interestingly, in that mix, U.S. is the second cheapest, then New Zealand, Canada, U.S., New Zealand, UK, and then Australia, which is more than almost 3 times the next highest number. So the visa fees have been a significant roadblock, or are becoming a more significant roadblock. It's depressing the numbers as well. And the non-refundable part of this visa story is something that is also being seen as a real issue for Australia, perhaps longer term in terms of a reputational damage to the country as a destination. So we'll see where that goes, but we certainly see an impact on student interest, and in terms of their applications, they vote with their feet, obviously. That means that there will be consequences in the economy for those that aren't able to come into these universities and subsequently into jobs because of the fees that they're being charged. So a lot to digest, obviously, if you're an Australian international educator these days, as we have here in the U.S. And as I said earlier, that's one of the reasons we have this section in the newsletter called the Global Roundup that covers what's happening in the other major destination markets and other countries that are trying to become destinations for international students, what the challenges that they're facing are and how we can learn from them perhaps. And be fortunate in some ways, and that's kind of hard to think at this point, but fortunate that our fees are where they are compared to the competition. We have a lot of other issues, obviously, that complicate things here in the U.S., but it's always good to know how others are faring with these same sort of issues. So we usually do reserve one of our 3 questions that we answer here on Wednesdays for the roundup to one of those global issues or countries, other destinations that we can learn from. So that's all we have for you this week on the roundup. Thanks again for being a part of the conversation. Looking forward to chatting with you next week. Cheers.